Okay, Monday, June 8th. Yay! In this shit show. Woo! You know, I can't help but get frustrated, and I, again, do my internal calming mechanisms, but when you really look at what they're doing here, I'll back up. I've talked about the fact that, or maybe I haven't on a past video, you know, we've had incidents occur in the past from Rodney King to Eric Gardner to things that were wrong and protested. And you saw them on the news, and, you know, people came out to voice their opinions. And of course there was things that got out of hand that made the news. But you didn't have commercials, actual propagandized commercials in between, you know, internet videos or even television, radio announcers on music radio, bringing it up. And yesterday, I was out of town most of the day yesterday. I had to do something with my son, so I unfortunately, the last minute, I couldn't make it up for Mark's show, but they did a great job. Thanks for covering for me, and you know, I'll see you guys next time. But you know, I of course listened on the road and got home, and my son wanted to play with his friends a bit on the PS4. I was going to get a bonfire going out back, and my wife was making dinner, blah blah blah. So I go up to get him, and he's playing, you know, I don't know, one of those shoot 'em up games, and with his friends, and in the corner there's a banner that says Black Lives Matter. And I'm like, dude, what the fuck is that? And he's like, oh yeah, it's been there for like almost a week. And it just really, really struck me, the in-your-face propaganda, the civil unrest that they want to ensue, and the direction that they want it to be taken, and why they want it to be taken that way, the division that it causes, you know, as opposed to the uniting of all races, religions, cultures, creeds, ages, genders, you know, whatever, under the fact that we're in a predicament here where, you know, authoritarian government is trying to take away human freedom under the guise of protecting everyone and enforcing tyrannical, you know, totalitarianism, taking away of rights, surveillance, forced vaccines, forced testing, mask wearing, you know, trackers and literal insanity, robot dogs walking around going, keep your fucking distance. Like, people, we're losing focus here, you know. There's another protest that popped up here, a peaceful one again. They had the one I told you about, the Ocean City Bridge, Somers Point, that was peaceful. They had the one here now, you know, in my own town. It was peaceful. Like, this is occurring because the media is pushing it. Now, again, I'm not saying there isn't police brutality to deal with. I've told you, I've seen the transformation of you know, the Joe-friendly, go, say hello, help anyone you can, police officer, to the, you know, everyone's the enemy, and now I'm in my TAC year, post 9/11 police officer. I've seen the psychological transition even back in the late 90s when, you know, this began to rear its ugly head. And, you know, these problems exist. But there is an agenda here. There is an agenda not only to get people and turn people against the police to bring about the martial law they want to bring in. They want it to be done in a contrived way, as Mark actually brought up yesterday on his show, with various aspects, various groups of people taking part in these protests, you know. You have your rioters and looters that are being paid to come in and do things. You have your opportunists, you know. You have your extreme lefts and your extreme rights and your agent provocateurs, however, who are all being all funded, brought in, and contrived by the same entity, by the same force, by the same people. And of course, the defund the police thing that people want to go, yay. Look, who the fuck needs, you know, again, we're supposed to be mature adults, you know, calling the police on each other. And, you know, I've never lived my life needing the state, the police, or any government entity in my life. You know, particularly having spent 11 years of my life working for a municipality, another 2 years working for a state, and another, you know, 14 years working for a corporate entity. It's all the same, and they're all things that people think we need to stay safe and to, well, what these people want to do is have you defund and dismantle the police and then bring in a more tyrannical, privatized police with all kind of technology that isn't government controlled because it's privatized. They want you to want it, and they want you to be all happy that you defunded the police. Yay, look what we did, mommy, daddy, I'm virtue signaling over an incident that I'm going to come out and say, as a retired police officer, sorry, looks very suspicious to me. I don't know what kind of cop is going to kneel on the ground with one knee and then kneel on the suspect with another, particularly in the neck, the old Israeli training that these cops are being taught, I guess. But to have both knees on the ground leaves you extremely vulnerable. And why is he not putting it in handcuffs? Why is the guy not fighting for his life? Why is it that there's evidence that they know each other? See a butterfly. Butterfly. Hey. You know, why is it that they responded to this call of a guy in a big city trying to pass a fake 20 like he was Lee Harvey Oswald at the movie theater? Why was he immediately not just arrested and put in the police car? I mean, there's so many things to make this look suspect. But again, I don't know. Fuck do I know? All I know is I see strange things are afoot. And I see the contrived steering of these protests. And I see the agenda. And I see, of course, the bigger picture that people were starting to see over this ridiculousness of this pandemic. And if people can't see that bringing in the pandemic too, as all of these COVID laws are passing now, but you're not hearing about any COVID anymore, it's nothing but riots and unrest on every channel, every radio station, right down to the PlayStation, online games. And again, who's it targeting? If you're not teaching your kids, if you're sheltering your kids and you're not teaching them the truth, yeah, Black lives matter, white lives matter, Chinese lives matter, Asian lives matter, Iraqi lives matter, Iranian lives matter, European lives matter, British lives matter, all fucking lives matter. Get a fucking grip, you idiots. Of course, the only people that are saying that are out virtual signaling and trying to act like they're rebelling because they have, again, been completely damaged psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, and physically, in some cases, by their parents. Because the commonality of losing rights for all races is what people should be focusing on. And to be distracted, like a town like this having, like, it's very weird that they had this protest and it was peaceful. Again, when you see it all over the mainstream media, you realize how powerful the mainstream media is. People are still just, and they can't sit back and say, wait a minute, you know? And even if you do think it's real and go, that is fucked up. But what are they trying to do by this? I've never seen it on every other channel. I've never seen such a response by media. What happened to COVID? Like, who doesn't start to ask themselves questions? As David Icke calls them, press enter people. And these are the people that are putting other people's freedom in jeopardy. There is a divide. There's a divide whether or not you choose to side with objective right or wrong, which there is a thing that is true, objective, and real when it comes to right and wrong. You do not have the right to take other people's rights away. You do not have the right to control people. It doesn't matter if you're a government or you're in a uniform or if you're a scared person wearing a mask. You don't have the right to control other people. Do whatever the fuck you need to do to feel safe, but you don't have the right to control other people, and you don't have the right to support others to enforce what you want done by way of controlling other people. Because A, you're either brainwashed or in fear, or, you know, I don't even care if the problem was real. You know? And I'd like to think that enough people get it. And what we're seeing in the world is what they want us to see, you know? The bigger cities, of course, they're way more fucked up than this with loony birds. Around here, you know, again, you see masks now that people are starting to come down the shore, mostly by bikini-wearing 20-year-olds in the Wawas and at the gas stations, you know, in their mommy and daddy's BMWs, because that's what's cool to do. My favorite is when they wear the mask. Of course, when they wear it in the car, they look fucking retarded. So what they do now is they wear it under here so they can show you, I'm a mask-wearing motherfucker. See? I'm just taking it down. This is the cool thing to do, you know? So programmable. And it's scary. And again, it's because most people haven't had their lives stopped, you know? I highly recommend Mark's show yesterday. He got into some very touching things and personal things about the recent loss he underwent, which I completely understand, as I similarly have lost someone that close. When you lose an acquaintance, a cousin, a grandmother, you know, things are, you know, sad. But when you lose the person who helped turn you into the person you are, it's a lot different, and I understand that. And it's happened to me more than once, believe it or not. You know, and two very different people and two very different means. You know, and it took me a long time. I mean, you're never fully over it, but it took me a long time to be at peace with it. I would say maybe even up until last year, and this occurred 20 years ago. 21, actually, 20 and a half. And why is that important? Because understanding that that's a part of awakening. Understanding, first of all, the trauma itself, the experiencing, dealing with it, pulling yourself in and out of those depressions, and then being able to take the experience in such a spiritual nature that it builds you into a better person. Makes you more courageous, makes you more principled, makes you more, you know, and not that you should be any less principled. I'm just saying you stand in it more. You don't fear things as much. Not that fear existed for many of us prior to, where it came to standing up for what is right. But when it comes to facing something like we are now, most people are held back because they're holding on to what they have, and they're afraid to risk it. They're afraid to, you know, lose whatever reputation they have, whatever physical means, money aspects, jobs, whatever it is. And it's all illusory. And when you go through such a traumatic experience, you realize that it all means fucking nothing if you're not doing the right thing in the world. You know, and of course people do fall into states of depression if they're not aware. You know, I've been there, we've all been through it, but they can be chronic because, again, understanding how we work. You know, when we think about and relive those things, the body doesn't. And I didn't understand this for the longest time while I was actually teaching these concepts to those who had gone through childhood trauma in my previous career. You know, again, we're always, you know, so helpful in service to others, and a lot of times it'll be in you know, sacrifice to self, and it can't be that way, and that's something that needs to be learned as well. You know. And then finally internalizing the fact that, you know, those sad thoughts were triggering the body into the moment, creating the chemicals that relive the emotions, which is then triggering the thoughts, and the body doesn't know the difference. And you're actually, you know, you say, it feels like it happened yesterday. Well, your body's telling you and acting like it did, you know, the realization of that. And then being able to control it, and then being able to feel those feelings and let them go and not hold on to them, and then being able to flip them into happier things. These are all things people go through all over the world. Quietly, tragically, traumatically, and a lot of times alone. It really is a process that only, you know, can be done internally. But those are a lot of people that I see that are most awake. People that have suffered trauma, people that have gone through hell. You know, and Mark certainly had his share. We all have. You know, he's told you about his life a million times on the show. You know, I've shared various aspects of my own trauma. I don't get too deep into it. You know, I used to when I would talk to the kids to try to relate to their trauma in spending, you know, a decade and a half understanding them as opposed to just entertaining them, and creating real things to build on for them to then take into the world and internalize and become better people. That's the work, you know. And another thing, because I want to close out, that Mark brought up was he's going to be doing a online seminar, a teaching class of sorts, regarding beginner and intermediary work when it comes to software and production of shows and videos and technological means. You know, which I often say on here to people, put your name out there and just start talking. You know, I want to be able to do a hell of a lot more. I just don't have the skills, and I don't have anyone to teach me, and I don't have the patience or really the brain power to take it in myself on YouTubes and click things and try to learn. I have smashed and broken things because I get frustrated. So I could use a teacher, you know, and Mark offering that to people is something I'm going to look into. You know, see that I can afford the donation and commit to it, because you know, for me, you know, I've been out of the corporate or the work world now for about a year and a half after 2.5 careers, and I have no interest in going back, especially with everything going on. This is the only thing that's important, you know. So I want to be able to do this better. Doesn't mean I'm going to stop doing this, because this is now what I know how to do. I'm actually proud of the fact that I have figured all this out. To tell you the truth, you know, my inept skills on the computer are, just as I said, minuscule. And, you know, to have an opportunity to get better at that is something I think people should look into. I'm certainly going to look into it myself. And I highly recommend the entirety of the show. You know, the breakdown Mark does of current events is spectacular. Mark goes into a few, like I said, not only personal things about his recent trauma, but a personal family experience. These are things we can all kind of relate to. He certainly had me feeling emotion yesterday while he was talking about it, because I can empathize with it. I've experienced it, and I can put myself in that position. And if you haven't, just try to, you know, realize that, you know, your word is who you are, you know, and it's amazing that that's saying, because the word is truth. Truth has to be spoken into existence. And speaking about things like that and opening up that way and putting yourself out there for others, knowing that this is the path to true self-awakening, that all the details of all the shit going on in the world is just one aspect of it. Those are things that, you know, are rare, and I think that people should take advantage of them and internalize it and hit the mirror a little bit when it comes to the way they're looking at this, whether they're in the dialectic of left-right, whether they're in this mindset of division race-wise, or you know, the pandemic or whatever it is. Take a step back and look at the big picture. We're all in this together, and we've all been traumatized and drama-filled and brainwashed and indoctrinated. And taking a step back and realizing that we're all victims of this, and we can all get out of this by individually realizing this is all bullshit. We are more than they tell us. We have more power than they could possibly imagine. Why they need us to comply with this? They need us to fall for this. They need us to divide. They need us to be in that psychological mindset, and mindset of fear and trauma and finger pointing and hatred in order to do what they're doing. So in order to do that, you have to start to understand and love yourself, and to internalize your own experiences and try to better yourself in the world by speaking the truth and standing in what is right. If you do that, well, then you're not complying with your own enslavement, because you won't allow your rights or someone else's to be taken, because you understand the value of that. It's an ongoing process, you know, and I think that if people can realize it's bigger than the details of whether George Floyd was real or faked, or whether this is fake, or whether, and those are all important things not to go out and argue over, but to see that there are questions to be asked, but to take ourselves out of that and realize this is a psychological spiritual war. Step into that, by looking at ourselves. Anyway, love you guys. Get learning, get speaking.